cultivate our generosity and welcome all of you to join in that offering. And the food will be offered first to the monks and the nuns. And the lay people, if you would rather stay in the temple, you're most welcome to. And for the venerable monks, may I ask you to please take your bowls and to line in a nice orderly, carefully, please, down the stairs, because it is carpet, and your socks, very, very carefully going down the stairs. And to take your bowl, and the great devotees downstairs, you will meet them. They have been preparing for the food, and we'll have a very delicious lunch for the Sangha. And then we will return back here at around 1 o'clock. And after lunch for the monks, they can come upstairs and you can find any room to relax. There's a little library, there's some classroom, there's the temple. So feel comfortable. This is your place for you to relax until we start the program in the afternoon with the Thai Mahasangha who will start the program. So all the nuns who've come from Alaska and Thailand, we're so happy to see you. And they've been very involved in the decoration. Please take mindful step as you're walking down the stairs. Go slowly.
So we feel very blessed. So it's wonderful to be able to end the day with a Dharma talk from such an eminent speaker. And I will hand over to Wangmo now, who will introduce our evening speaker, and then we will begin our Dharma talk. Thank you.
Sorry, I think someone's at the door. My duty calls. Well, welcome. We've really had a beautiful day together. This is our second day, and it's just so full of Dhamma in this Dharma hall. And what better way to illuminate the teachings than through a living master, a guiding elder, someone who lives in the Dhamma. So we're very blessed to have the end of the evening to tie it together, these very important theme, most important theme of wisdom and compassion, and to bring it alive in our daily existence, to embody it and to get closer to it, to touch it, to realize it. And so I feel very fortunate that we can hear from a guiding elder. Just briefly, for those of you who do not know our keynote speaker, Venerable Ajahn Pasano, I would like to first start with some very special news that he's just been recently given the title by the King of Thailand, which is a great honor, as Pra-Raj Bodhi-Vides, and so this was just recently given to him, and many, many congratulations for this award for your all of the great Dharma activities that I will be sharing with you just in brief. Venerable Ajahn Pasano took ordination in Thailand in 1974 with Venerable Prakru Nana Sri Vatana as his preceptor. During his first year as a monk, he was taken by his teacher to meet Ajahn Chah, with whom he asked to be allowed to stay and train. One of the early residents of Wat Pa Nanachad, Ajahn Pasano became its abbot in its 9th year. And during his incumbency, Wat Pa Nanachad developed considerably, both in physical size and reputation. He spent 24 years living in Thailand, and Ajahn Pasano became a well-known and highly respected monk and Dharma teacher. He moved to California on New Year's Eve of 1997 to share the abbotship of Abhigiri with Ajahn Amaro. And in 2010, Ajahn Amaro accepted an invitation to serve as the abbot of Amaravati Buddhist monastery in England, giving Ajahn Pasano to serve as the sole abbot of Abhigiri for the next 8 years. And in the spring of 2018, Venerable Ajahn Pasano stepped back from his role of abbot, leaving the monastery for a year-long retreat overseas. And so now he's just recently returned and is the guiding elder at Abhigiri Monastery. And I feel a kind of special connection with this community because our work in Bodh Gaya, I was recently, just by auspicious circumstances, this year a few of your monks will be coming to be the Dharma speakers, including Ajahn Amaro, who will be our keynote speaker under the Bodhi tree, Ajahn Kewali, and a few others. So I feel very blessed, and Richard and I first met the Theravada through Venerable Ajahn Sumedho in England, and that was our first introduction to the Theravada tradition. So I feel like there's some connection, and very blessed that you're here tonight to guide us in deepening our understanding.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa dhammang sanghang namasami. So welcome everybody, and I ask permission from the elders, the Sangha members, the lay community to speak on Dhamma this evening. The theme, something around wisdom and compassion. So we'll see what comes out. One of the things that came to mind in when one will let me know what the topic would be, was recollecting that, like from the say in the Mahayana and Vajrayana, then there's a lot of this tremendous emphasis on wisdom and compassion, and that they they're a pair that have to work together. And in the Theravada, it's interesting that there is another element to it with this aspect of wisdom, compassion, that also an element of purity. And so that when they do the recitation, like Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, which is paying homage to the Buddha, it is recollecting these qualities. The Namo Tassa, of course, is giving homage. Bhagavato is normally translated as like the Blessed One, the one who gives blessing or is a blessed being. And this is the element of compassion. Bhagavato Arhato is pointing to the element of purity. And they say Arhato is when we do our chanting, is translated as noble, like homage to the blessed, noble, perfectly enlightened one. We translate it as noble. The translation, when it's translated into Thai, to me is very interesting because it says one who is far from defilement, and that's an interesting aspect in the sense of, because so often what we think in terms of, say, like purity, especially like in the English language, then and Judeo-Christian philosophy, or the way that our worldview, things are pretty black and white, and there is a tendency to conceive of things in very absolute terms, and that's never really been the case in terms of, say, from the approach from a Buddhist perspective, because once you start dealing in absolutes, then you're kind of stuck, you're sunk. So that sense of, I say, like absolute purity. So that sense of being far from defilement is a little different way of relating to it. So it's like where the mind sees things clearly, and there's still there are the conditioning factors of mind, but it's seen clearly, so it doesn't really land. It doesn't really, in the sense, like there's those series of discourses where the Buddha is, where Mara comes to tempt the Buddha, and you think, well, because there's different aspects of Mara, both as Deva Buddha Mara, as a physical being, also Kilesa Mara, the internal qualities. And say, well, and the Buddha's response is, I see you, Mara. And then that's the end. I mean, that's Mara is powerless. So this sense of purity is not, it isn't as if there's this constant, absolute, but there is the heart that is not affected by whatever condition. Because as soon as you have a body and a mind, you've got a problem. Whether you're enlightened or you're not enlightened. And so that is to be able to see that clearly. And of course then that is this aspect of wisdom, is then how do we take that knowledge and apply it? Or how do we live it? And of course then that's when it ties into compassion. So that these are interrelated qualities that tend to support each other and balance each other. And again, that when we think of the quality of wisdom, because the Buddha manifests these qualities, but they're not, I say, exclusive to the Buddha. I mean, the Buddha didn't keep everything for himself, and we were sort of out of luck. Everything that he experienced was able to, he gave everything for people to continue to practice and experience the same qualities that allowed him to be free. So I think it's quite important to see these qualities of wisdom, of purity, of compassion, working together and balancing each other. And that, and again, not making it absolute and other in the sense of, oh, that's just what the Buddha does, and the rest of us are well, too bad. These are qualities which are accessible to all of us. So that's I think it's a really essential aspect of the Buddha's teachings, and when we think of whatever the Buddha taught, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for how we live in the world? So being able to draw that in, to internalize it in the ways that one of the qualities that we recollect on a regular basis, and qualities of the Dhamma is open aiko. It's leading inwards. We have to draw it into the heart and into our own experience, so that we're able to manifest that ourselves also. Some compassion and purity they're kind of like guideposts or reminders of what's helpful for us as we go about our daily life, how we interact with the world around us, how we relate to our own meditation and cultivation, that these are qualities we want to be lifting up, relying on, drawing into the heart. Now these are, and there isn't anything that is beyond us. But as we reflect on these aspects of it's like compassion, and what does compassion mean in terms of a quality of being, a quality of heart, I could say. Traditionally, it's that response to suffering, that when there is suffering, there is a wish to alleviate suffering, and that is an aspect of it's what's called a divine abiding, but it's also a way that we need to pay attention to the experience of suffering, because that's what the Buddha said over and over and over again throughout his teaching career. So I teach only two things: suffering and the end of suffering, and to be recognizing that relating from compassion to the manifestation of suffering, both in our own hearts and primarily in the beginning, because we have to learn how to, what is it? What is this experience of dukkha, and the sense of dis-ease, discontent, stress that we all experience, and then how to respond to that. Because I think one of the things that compassion really helps to do is helps us to not get locked into the tendency that we have to idealize or to conceptualize or to rationalize the teachings and the practice too much. It's easy for our minds to set our quite noble goals as Buddhist practitioners, to set them external to ourselves or set them up, elevated on something that is idealized and conceptualized, as opposed to what does it feel like? What's the experience? And when we do that, of course, there's a separation. And if we're separated, then we're still going to keep suffering. So that being able to bring that back in and say, how do I work with suffering? And in that sense of that tendency of the mind to be ill at ease, uncomfortable, unfulfilled in some way, and thinking that there's something else out there that's going to fix it, it's going to make it better. Like there's a West monk who lived with, and he noticed that Ajahn Chah would, oftentimes treat the Thai monks and the Western monks a little bit differently, in that he could be a bit more maybe critical or a bit more fierce with the Thais than he would with the Westerners, and so then the monk asked Ajahn Chah, because it was sort of like saying, well, like somehow we're missing out on this, the way that Ajahn Chah treats these monks, and then we're not getting the same treatment, so we must be missing out. We must be not getting the kind of the full training. And so then he asked Ajahn Chah, so, I noticed that this is the case, and it'd be good if you treated us the same way as you do. And Ajahn Chah, his reply was, you guys criticize yourselves enough. I don't need to do it. So I think that's a really compassionate way to really seeing different situations. He wasn't taking a template and just emulating a template and as I making it all very rational and consistent. It was out of compassion. He was seeing say a habit that we didn't need to repeat. So anyway, there's the sense of how these compassion and purity and wisdom, these, they do fit together, they work together, they balance each other in different ways. And I think particularly with compassion, another example of Ajahn Chah that comes to mind is Ajahn Sumedho, when he first met Ajahn Chah, because he met a Thai monk who invited him to come down and told him about Ajahn Chah, invited him to come down. And that monk he'd had some education. He was from a very well-off family, and also been in the Navy, been in the Thai Navy, and Ajahn Sumedho had been in the American Navy. So they shared some history, and this monk in particular was quite strict, and was really keen on Ajahn Chah as a really strict monk. So he took Ajahn Sumedho back to meet Ajahn Chah, and then Ajahn Sumedho ended up staying on with Ajahn Chah, training with him. And then after some time, I'm not sure how long, a couple of years, 2-3 years, well, I'm not sure how long. Anyway, the Thai monk ended up disrobing and leaving the training. And not only did he disrobe, but he became an alcoholic, he was a drug user, and was leading a very unskillful life, and would show up from time to time, and Ajahn Sumedho would get really upset and complain to Ajahn Chah, how could this happen? How there was this monk who was, he encouraged me, he spoke so highly of you, how could he do this? And Ajahn Chah said,
to ask questions, and there's a microphone over there, and you're welcome to come up here too.
So I have 2 questions, if I may. The first has to do with compassion and the 4 Brahma Viharas. So compassion is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, and I'm wondering, why is it singled out? Why is it wisdom and compassion rather than wisdom and joy or wisdom and equanimity?
okay. I can speculate or proliferate, but I don't, it's probably more to do with Buddhist history than with, and I think, again, just as a conjecture, the element of and I touched on it a bit, in the sense of compassion being a quality that helps the mind, the heart, to go beyond its tendency to idealize or to see the suffering in that objectification, and that's something that is fundamental to our suffering, is this objective, a subject object, and so that with the opportunity to come back to a non-dual as I'm a bit hesitant to use that term because it then conjures up something solid as well, like a solid non-dual. I mean, it's the way the mind works. So that, but there is this that compassion is something that we can engage in, and engages the heart. That helps us to see the limitation of our either the externalizing or the internalizing, the me and the other, or the self and other, the me and the world.
Thank you. So my second question is, I'm just taking advantage of the opportunity. It's something I've been thinking about. I've been reading the Kalama Sutta, and at the beginning of that sutta, the Kalamas come to the Buddha and they say, we're confused because we hear so many different stories, so many different teachings. And the Buddha says, you're right to be confused. And so my question is there a relationship, I'm sure the words are different, but is there a relationship between that confusion and delusion, in the sense of greed, hatred, and delusion?
Well, I mean, I think in the case of, I mean, delusion these are very fundamental, like greed, hate, delusion. These are really fundamental roots. Like in the Pali, that's called mula kilesa. These are root defilements. So one who's gone beyond delusion would be seeing things clearly, and for in that particular sutta, I mean, they are confused because I mean, they're getting conflicting teachings. They're getting, so they're being fed delusion. And when they themselves are not free from delusion, it's a wonderful cycle there. So it's, but they are experiencing, as the Buddha said, it's worthy of confusion.
Okay, thank you.
The idea just came to mind that related to what you were saying before, Ajahn, about suffering and the end of suffering, that the nature of compassion is the wish to end suffering, and wisdom provides the means, perhaps. But I wonder if you might say something about how can we see things clearly? What's most useful to see things as they actually are? And we've heard that Luang Por Cha taught about puru. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but like being the knowing, or different people have translated it in different ways. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a very common term in the Thai language, and certainly not restricted to Ajahn Chah. Very common in the Thai forest tradition. This sense of being the one who knows, and it comes from the definition. When they define or translate the word Buddha, it's one who knows, one who's awakened, one who's radiant. So those are the fundamental qualities of the Buddha. And of course those are qualities we want to be internalizing. And that sense of, but of course the fundamental quality is the quality of knowing. But it's not so much knowing in terms of getting a piece of knowledge or inheriting some more information, but it's more of the fundamental ability of the mind to know and to know itself, and in particular to know Dhamma, to know things in their true nature. That's like there's a very beautiful way that say Ajahn Mun in his ballad of Liberation from the Khandhas is that there's an illustration of that knowing, and it's sort of like it's something like the mind that knows the Dhamma as the Dhamma, the Khandhas as the Khandhas, then dwells unentangled, and that's the end of the matter. Something like that. I mean, this is very loose paraphrase, but it's similar to that. But so that sense of there's this fundamental quality that we have of awareness, of knowing, which we have to pay attention to, we have to nurture, we have to not let it get entangled, but that's just seeing truth as truth, seeing the khandhas, the body and mind. Okay, this is body, this is just body and mind, and to not let it get entangled. So that is and it's something that is actually that's not. It's kind of like a hallmark of the Thai forest tradition. Just returning to this puru, this one who knows. Tibetan tradition, similar. The Dzogchen masters tend to come back to that fundamental knowing. It's like there's a great quote by Patra Rinpoche, and he's like the Ajahn Mun of don't ruminate about the past, don't anticipate the future, don't cogitate about the present, not tampering with it, leave mind just as is, aware, relaxed. Beyond this, there's not a damn thing. So, I really like that.
Would you say then, Ajahn, that what people normally call their mind is not actually mind, it's just like kilesas or contents, but that the mind itself is something else?
That itself is a concept.
Oh.
And it's important. It says, yena himanyate, tato tam hoti anyata. For however one conceives it, it will always be other than that. It's what we do to ourselves. So, and it's just like, it's like Ajahn Chah saying, there's only two things to do, know and let go. And so whatever, there's that knowing, and then there's a releasing, and then there's that knowing again, and there's that releasing. And you can't fix it. I mean, the sense of fix it as a solid thing. You can't make it into a something. So but it's not a nothing. And so it's just this, but it's learning, a lot of it's around trust and faith. So much of, I felt like with say wisdom, compassion, purity, another element that we tend not to talk about is faith or devotion. And I think it's really, in most traditional cultures, that's just the kind of the heartbeat of it, the kind of the ground that it all grows up from, and sometimes for us as Westerners, given our cultural background and what, then we tend to have a bit of a suspicious relationship to faith or devotion, but it plays I think it plays a huge role in that, like learning how to, one is to trust ourselves, and then trusting the process of the Dhamma, and then trusting in the knowledge that does arise.
Thank you. There have been a lot of great talks today, and following up on the previous question, just seeing if I kind of want to pin it down a little more. I love and there was the critique today, the talk about mindfulness, which was great. So you have this word mindfulness and the problem of taking it out of context or different traditions. I think I've heard you talk before about the establishments rather than foundations of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. I like the way of talking about it, of establishing, 4 establishments or establishing oneself in mindfulness. So my question is, as lay people especially, and using the 4 foundations of mindfulness as the framework here, is the practice and our goal to be mindful every minute of the day? And within that would be, and how would that relate to times when we're, say, thinking or reflecting, or are we, and then not being mindful, or what? That's the question.
Well, I think one of the things is, and thinking and reflecting are aspects of being mindful of our thoughts and feelings. Because it's so, being mindful of our actions are a helpful tool, but it is a tool. It's a mirror to be able to see more clearly what's our mind doing, what's the mood, what's the feeling, and allowing that quality of mindfulness, because mindfulness in general, needs an object. It's not just some free-floating mindfulness. It is a tool, and then also it's very rare for the Buddha to talk about mindfulness without having qualifiers, particularly like clear comprehension or alertness is an aspect that is inseparable from mindfulness. So then what you're doing, mindfulness is then with the sampajanya, the clear comprehension, alertness, then it's understanding context. And in terms of the situation that one is in, and then one's own response and feeling towards that moment to moment. So that is a part of the cultivation. And
the clear comprehension, you would call that an aspect of mindfulness, quality of mindfulness?
yeah, it'd be a quality of mindfulness. I mean, it's inseparable from mindfulness. And as I was saying, like it's almost never that the Buddha just talks about, say, sati as something that is free-floating or freestanding or indivisible. Sort of, it has this qualifier of at least clear comprehension, and then oftentimes in more formal aspects of the defining or illustrating of mindfulness, then the Buddha also includes the aspect of effort, as well as because it's atapi sampajano satima vinaya loke apichato manasa. So these are qualities that are round out the sense of mindfulness. So you've got effort. It's not without effort. Mindfulness is say from looking at it from Buddhist psychology, mental formation. The characteristic of a mental formation is that it has Chaitanya. It's a volition. It's a volitionally produced condition. So so effort, and effort, the way the Buddha always defines effort is effort in terms of the arising of what is skillful and the ceasing of what is unskillful. So that was our effort toward that. And then, say, mindfulness in the sense of over the mind. There's a presence. There's a certain clarity of mind that is there. And then sampajanya, the clear comprehension, the alertness, the contextual reading of the situation and the internal quality. And then the last one is the part of mindfulness is also to step back from the tendency to liking and disliking. So that's our wanting and not wanting. Or so that delight and grief.
So the effort being like the cultivation and the letting go, that's kind of part of mindfulness.
Oh, it's part of mindfulness, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a package.
When I listen to the answer, it just comes to my mind about the mindfulness when it maturity and it's very deep. The mind is absent of any concept, any preoccupied idea, so it becomes emptiness, and that is the very end of suffering. So, how you explain about from the mindfulness to emptiness?
Well, I mean that's the function of, well, I mean it depends how you talk about it or how you present it. But say today, we'll say that okay, that's a manifestation of wisdom, compassion, purity. So those are these you illustrate it in different ways because you can't separate the Dhamma of the Buddhas. It's like this has got little threads dangling here, and if I just take one of them, but I start pulling on it, this whole table starts to go. It's all tied together, and so mindfulness is going to be tied to every. Well, I mean, even formally, then the Buddha never talks about mindfulness. Mindfulness is a part of the Eightfold Path. Or then he starts the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then it expands out. So these are points of reference for investigation to see how they connect to everything else. And in the end, because they connect and they have the possibility of manifesting in complete freedom. Complete freedom is necessarily going to be, say, empty, and particularly empty of self. I mean, that's it. Emptiness is not a metaphysical entity, but it's a description of the relinquishing of the self delusion.
Thank you, Fante. In practice, I can see that when the mindfulness deepening and become maturity, and it ascends any conceptualization and the idea. So when it becomes emptiness, it becomes a natural response to the whatever happened there, and just the true compassion.
Question. So say someone has manifested like emotional pain in their body and they want to alleviate it, which is kind of like they want to push it away or stay with it. I guess what's the skillful thing to do with that?
Well, I think with recognizing pain. I mean, the whether it's physical or whether it's emotional, the underlying or immediate desire or wish is to push it away, and so to be able to be patient enough and to be and recognize that because oftentimes if we can rationalize it as if I just pushed it away or I didn't have to feel this, then that would be an act of compassion for myself. And sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes you can't just, you have to learn how to balance, because sometimes, say like pain is a motivation. Sometimes pain is overwhelming, and you need to learn how to do it in small doses, and you have to learn how to hold it with kindness and compassion, and so that you can't just be bashing away at pain. Again, whether it's physical or emotional, one has to, that's just where wisdom is important, because sometimes the wisdom to lift up something that is inspiring or encouraging or allows one to say alleviate the feeling without trying to annihilate or dismiss, but it's that okay, I need to get back to this sometime, but for now it's too much. So that's wisdom, because we can't just because it looks good on paper, oh, the end of suffering is like this. That isn't how our heart will respond to it. And so we have to learn how to modulate our practice. So often people burn out in practice because they're doing all the right things by it's all by the books, by paper, but they're not tuning into their own experience. It's theorizing or idealizing, conceptualizing. So we have to come back to our experience and say, okay, what can I deal with right now? What is actually going to help right now? What is going to be beneficial? And so that is there's and sometimes you have to. I remember just so often going to, like all of us as students of Ajahn Chah, going to him and asking for advice, wanting to get the right handle on the practice, right? And it was really frustrating because so often you just have to be patient. And it was, I don't want to be patient, I want to get this over with. But that just because you want it like that isn't how it works.
And also, so like if you're experiencing compassion and it hurts, like is this pain? Is compassion supposed to be without that kind of pain of empathy or?
Well, the reality is again, you have to separate out what it says in the books, because and yes, say as a divine abiding, then one of the stains of or obstacles of compassion is being overwhelmed by pity, suffering, and so being overwhelmed by suffering. But as the reality is that it's the willingness to lift up that experience of suffering and feeling with it, and then looking for a skillful, true way of holding it and working with it. And that takes time, so that there's an element of suffering or pain, and being willing to turn one's attention to what is the compassionate response. But we don't learn if we don't feel. So.
Thank you. I'm reminded of where we are actually in this temple hall, and the plaques on the wall are the 8,000 line Prajna Paramita, and they are in Tibetan and in Lanza, which is a sacred symbol. And so for me, we see these scriptures or these letters that actually point to wisdom. One time on Vulture's Peak, they were announced. And so I think just coming back home to our refuge, to our Dharma Vihara. This morning we heard that word, and taking that back into our own experience and making that really a relevant place of direct experience, so that these teachings that point to something that the Buddha understood through his awakening are pointers, but we have to point back to our own home. And I think it's really wonderful to hear a guiding elder who's using our life journey, as the practical material the nourishing material for us to be entering into this path. And it has to be relevant to ourselves, that personal narrative, whatever that journey is. So we've had a very full day, and thank you all for being with us and for sharing in Dhamma together. And just as a little symbol to Ajahn Pasana, we have a katak, which is for auspiciousness and long life and more Dhamma talks, more and more, wherever they may be. One place I would like to start with is just a little seed, is maybe Bodh Gaya. So I'm going to offer you a photo that I took several years ago under the Bodhi tree. Not actually, I didn't take myself, but it means a lot to me. It was sitting in my office, and I thought, this is just from me to you to say thank you. Actually, from all of us.
Well, 50 years. Can I offer a blessing?
Okay, now you can hold your Sanghadana. We will say the word of offering in Pali. For the welfare and happiness of our devotee, because the Buddha, he laid down the three foundations, that is dana, generosity, and the way to improve the quality of our one time we come to join the Sikh International Day by chanting.
ชิตปัลลังเกสีเสปะทวิโภคาเรอภิเสเกสัพพพุทธานังอาคาปัตโตขโมทติสุนัขขัดตังสุมังคลังสุปาปยากรรมังปัฏฐาคินังปัฏฐาคินังมโนกรรมังปณิทิเตปะทานลพันตัตเตปะทาคินเนชยันโตโพธิวัตโนเอวังตวัตตาปะโตปโมกติสุนัขขัดตังสุมังคลังสุปาปาตังสุพุทธิตังกายกรรมังเวปะทาคินาปะทาคินามิกโตนัลปัตตัตเทปะทาคิเนชยันโตโพธิยามูเลสักยานันติวัตโนเอวังตวังวิจโยโพหิตยาสุจยมังคัลอัปปราชิตปัลลังเกสีเสปะทวิโภคาเรอภิเสเกสัพพพุทธายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปะทาคินังปะทาคินังมโนกรรมังปณิทิเตปะทาคินาปะทาคินานิกตวานลภาคินังมโนกรรมังปณิปโนสุปทาคินังกายกรรมังวาจากรรมังปะทาคินังปะทาคินังมโนกรรมังปณิทิเตปะทาคินาปะทาคินานิกตวานลพันตัตเตปะทาคิเนภวันตุเต
because many things to work together, and then also I think what one more and Richard Dixie have started Tipitaka chanting. I think here this area is very very important for Buddha Sasana in the West. In the West, they might start it in India, but here I think here on this land, on this part of the world, the people in need of Buddhism, we are as Buddhists. We always believe that Buddhism is the one of the best for individual, best for the society. So I think if we are able to work together, we can spread out.